Welcome to Wildspire. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate conversations with entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto, coach, storyteller, and unmarketer at The Awakened Business, helping coaches and change-making entrepreneurs unleash their inspired message and share it with playful unmarketing. I'll ask curious questions and explore uncharted waters with my guest today. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. My guest today is Schildkret. I'm really excited to introduce you to him because his inspiring story is an example of how the things that are alive in you today that don't look like they have anything to do with business or making money will very naturally, organically take you in the direction of creating anything you'd like in your life when you follow those inclinations. And so often we bury those nudges and try to follow something practical instead of turning to what's really alive inside of us and expressing that in the world. This is what Day did phenomenally in a way that really connected with other people and led to things that became highly profitable for him in business, but also deeply meaningful that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't trusted what was inside of him. So a bit more about Day. Day Schildkret is an award-winning queer author, artist, ritualist, teacher, and is internationally known for Morning Altars, which BuzzFeed calls a celebration of nature and life. With nearly 100,000 followers on social media, Day has worked for close to 2 decades with thousands of individuals, communities, and organizations to help heal the culture through a meaningful and creative response to marking personal and collective change. Day is the author of Hello, Goodbye, 75 Rituals for Times of Loss, Celebration, and Change, which hit Amazon's #1 book in 3 categories, as well as Morning Altars, a 7-step practice to nourish your spirit through nature, art, and ritual. He is also the founder and principal instructor of the Morning Altars Practitioner and Teacher Training. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Day Schildkret. Why, hello, Day.
Hello.
Welcome. Welcome to my Wildspire podcast. I am thrilled to have you here as my rainbow-colored guest. If you're watching the video, you can see why I'm saying that. He's got little rainbows from a prism I am gathering, floating
So there are
from.
little fairies that are visiting my body while we're talking.
Same thing, right? It's perfect.
Yes, that's fair. Yeah. I like to bathe in rainbows before I do a podcast.
So, a lot of the people in my community are change-making entrepreneurs. A lot of them are coaches. They have big hearts and a big vision for the world. And so many of them struggle or feel challenged by this idea of having a business because it seems as if it's incompatible with this heart-centered way of living and serving that they want to create in the world. Now, I contend that it is not. However, I think it's really cool to show examples of people doing business differently. And in particular, something that I've become really passionate about exploring, which I call getting paid to be you, being yourself in the world and letting the way you want to live and the things you want to do provide the means by which you can do that. So it's sustainable and joyful and you have a thriving life. And I think you're a really good example of that, Day. So
Me?
it's you, my fairy visited friend. So I would love for you to share with me the story of your business, which, as I recall you saying, it sounds like what I might call an impossible, if not an improbable business, where you're actually making a profit through loss, ritual, and impermanent art, which is a fascinating combination. So please tell me more.
Sure. Well, I think before we jump into my story, I do want to say, because the lead in is a really juicy conversation. So do you mind if I just like jump
I
in that
don't.
juicy conversation first,
Please,
and then
let's
I'll
do
get
that.
to my personal
Okay.
story? Okay. So the juicy part of the conversation I want to jump into is um having a business with being called to offer a gift to the world, and having a business that brings that gift into the world is not an improbable thing. However, bringing that business into the world in these times is. And so I want to just give a shout out to those folks that are really struggling right now, that know their gifts, that know how needed they are. But the environment that we are offering those gifts in is, can I curse on this podcast?
Yes, you
It's
can.
fucking crazy. It is a lunatic marketplace out there right now. I do a teacher training, and one of the practicum lessons we do is what I call heart-centered marketing. And it is really, I'm very successful, but it is also the environment. It's really hard to maintain a genuine voice. It's really hard to go at a human pace. It's really hard to like not get frustrated. It's so I just want to approach the conversation with a lot of empathy for people that are listening. And also, as an artist myself, first and foremost, even my heart is an artist. My love is business, but my heart is an artist. And as an artist, we are always approaching limits and breaking them. That is our job, is to understand limits and to somehow find a reinvention of the limitations. And so I think if we can approach business creatively in an insane time and in an insane landscape, then things are possible. But I think it's really important to approach the conversation both from a place of empathy and also from a place of creativity. So that's my spiel about that. Okay. So who am I? So my long story short of my story is I had many other careers before this one. Number one, I used to work on Broadway as a assistant director. That was another career. Was the executive director of a high school for a decade. That was another career. I was a coach for a few years. Anyway, throughout all of these experiences, there has been a deep love for nature and a deep desire to be creative, to tell stories. And on top of that, and this is also part of my Jewish upbringing, a deep reverence for ritual and for making meaning is another way of saying it. Long story short, in 2011, I went through like both a breakup, and my father passed away after battling cancer for 4 years. And so I was having trouble doing anything at the time. Like when you're grieving from a double whammy loss, it's like hard to socialize. It's hard to clean your dishes, let alone do any work. I had a dog at the time. Oh, here she is. You want to see her?
Yeah.
That's her. I mean, not Whimsy. This is Rudy. And this is actually a photo of her last day. And Rudy was my dad's dog. And so I adopted her after my father died, and I brought her back to California, and she got to live like a renewed in retirement. And anyway, she got me out of the house, which was a feat among itself, because when you're grieving like that, it's really, you just want to hermit inside. And so one day we went to a local park, and we walked to the top of a hill, and underneath this eucalyptus tree were these beautiful mushrooms that were growing. And I just sat down almost like a kid and just let myself, first and foremost, just take in the beautiful place. And then just something inside of me started to arrange the mushrooms, and then I took bark, and I just started to just get lost with my hands. And an hour went by like it was a minute. I made something beautiful out of what was just around me on the earth. And for the first time in a year, it felt like my grief was not overwhelming me. It felt like something had metabolized in my system. And so I challenged myself, could I go to that same spot for 30 days and make something else every day, just as a way to express my grief? And so those 30 days came and passed. I did not want to stop. I started to make them for other reasons of my life. People had babies, people got new jobs, just like life happened. And then I started to share them on social media, and then there was an explosion through sharing them. And then people all over the world started to go out to the places they lived and make their own expression for their own reasons. This one woman, for instance, in England, I'm remembering one day was dropped her kid off at school, sitting in the parking lot, going through, scrolling on social media. It was a 10-year anniversary of her mom's death. And she just didn't know what to do. And she was just scrolling as like a coping mechanism. And she came to my feed, was inspired, got outside of the car, went behind her kid's school in the forest, made this beautiful expression out of pine cones and moss and, and like all of these things that she found. And she wrote me a letter the following day and said it was the first time that she felt like close to her mom in 10 years, that her mom and her were talking again. So I knew there was something therapeutic that was happening from this. I was then asked to write a book about it. And in preparing for the book, I realized that there were 7 steps that I was doing in order to go through this process. And then from there, it became something that was actually wanted in the world beyond me. And so after years and years of bringing this to different communities and workshops and conferences and teaching about it, in 2020, we built a school. And so we just graduated we now have onboarded our 5th cohort. We have over 350 graduates who have been through the school. And this next cohort, it'll bring us up to 450 graduates. And we now have what has started off just for me dealing with my own grief has become the only therapeutic modality that integrates nature, creativity, and ritual in the world. And so through our teachers, we are represented now in about 14 different countries and growing. And so, and as you said at the beginning, this is a business that is very much like unlikely. It just shouldn't have happened as a business, but it has. And it's a growing business. I employ now 14 people in this business. That is it. And the question for me always, and this is how I started our conversation, is how do I not lose the spirit of the thing that I'm bringing into the world? Because it's so easy to grow too fast. It's so easy to go too fast. It's so easy to get too AI or like lose my voice in this. There's so many pitfalls. And so how do I continue to tend to the spirit of the work and it not get consumed by the marketplace? That's a lot.
Yeah. What is your answer to that day? How do you keep to the spirit, keep true to that spirit and heart of what you're set out to do?
Well, I'll tell you, maybe I can tell you through my current struggle. My current struggle is around sabbaticals, which is, I've written 2 books now. I have this incredible school. I have a very thriving business. And after each launch of anything, the launch of a new book, the launch of a new cohort, this past spring, I had a major art exhibit open in San Francisco that I opened at the same time of launching a new cohort, which was called Crazy. After each time, my last book, I said to myself, I'm going to take 6 months after this book and rest. And what happens is the 6 months become 6 weeks, and then the 6 weeks become 6 days. And all of that is because the culture that we live in is drunk on productivity and competency. And like no matter what, it doesn't value breaks or rest. It only values like achievement. And so the struggle for me right now is how do I continue to offer all of these things in the world, which I have so many ideas of new things I want to do. But I'm also at the edge of burnout, right? And so that is a very real consideration. That is the question for me right now of how do I protect my work by resting from the work? And so that's an example of something that I'm really engaged with right now. I don't necessarily have the answer, except we are in the process, my assistant and I are in the process of reducing my week to a 4-day work week, number one, and to start planning for a sabbatical. Um, and not because like I want it, but because I need it. Like I must do it. And that's like an example, but there's 10,000 pitfalls of how we can get lost in on the way towards offering our gifts to the world. And I think as long as we continue, I think the key word for me, if I'm teaching my students about this, the key word is return. We have to keep returning to rest, keep returning to like our original inspiration. We have to keep returning to our values. You can't just think you know it. You have to have mechanisms that help you return to
Mm,
it.
that's beautiful. So when you say return, so this is something that, I'm not a coach who specializes in helping people with burnout. There are a lot of
Oh,
them.
then I'm on the wrong podcast.
Oh no. You know what? But it but many people have crossed my path who have either been, as you're saying, like on the edge of burnout or have experienced it. And one of the things that I help people do, because we are trained to think that pressure and stress and pushing and more and more and more is necessary. And there's like a badge of honor that people wear in that. And my job is to help them see that not only is that not true, that there's an easier way to be inside of business. There's an easier way to be with work. There's a place where work feels more like play. And when you say return, what it speaks to in me, I love that you're in the question of it because life is going to show you if you have that question in your heart, like, how do I stay true to this? How do I allow this to be easeful? I know I need rest. What does it mean to preserve that? Return for me is what I see every day when I get caught up in my mind and the busyness of it because it's so noisy in here sometimes. No.
In your head?
Yes. It is full of all the things that must be done that I haven't done, the endless to-do list, and all of my thoughts about what other people might think and all the judgments about myself. And for me, it's returning to right here. It's returning to this moment
Mhm.
where there's just one thing to do. And I'm gonna leave it. I leave it a million times a day, and it's that return. That's what I heard when you said that. It spoke to me. It's knowing to come home to me, to this, that shows me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you've read my writing, if anyone's listening and read my writing, um, I'm a big etymology fan. And so I like to look at the roots of words. And the word return has the word re in it, which means again.
Mm,
And the word is implying that you've left. And it's not bad. It's the same kind of thing with the word remember. It's implying that you forgot. It's not bad. You actually need to forget to remember, and you need to turn away in order to return. So it's not a judgment thing. And I think that's where people get caught up is like that we always need to like be here, but we're not always here. We leave all of the time.
mhm.
We get distracted all the time. We have like, we get lost in our to-do lists and all of the things. The question is, and this is my ritual work, which is like, do we have mechanisms in our place to help us return when we do get lost? And that's the key is like actually having mechanisms, practices, whatever you call it, rituals that are daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, that help us return. And not because it's bad, but because it's human.
I like that a lot. So is it okay if I play with this a little bit day and like kind
Oh,
of bat some things around? Right. I feel like I know you enough not to take you seriously when you give me a hard time already.
I'm
So
from New York. This is the way we show love.
oh, good. I'm from New York too, not the city, upstate. It's a little different.
Whereabouts?
Poughkeepsie,
I went to
Poughkeepsie.
school in Binghamton.
You did. Oh, yes. I know many of the cities across New York State. I lived in Western New York too, in a little town called Eden, which is south of Buffalo. Yeah, it's tiny. So one of the things that I do love practices and I do love rituals and I do love this, like how we can become present and embodied. And what I heard in your story of creating art through the loss and the grief that you were experiencing is so very beautiful, that there was this presence you found in that an hour was gone in a heartbeat, which is one of the things that happens when you're just really present and absorbed in what you're doing, is it's timeless. That those practices are beautiful gifts, and I would tell people, if you are moved to do them, try them, integrate them, have them, find the mechanisms to support and make it easy or even inevitable what you know you need to do to care for yourself. Absolutely. And one of the things that I've been finding is that the reason I leave is because I think I have to. It gets, this, it's so compelling, the contents of my mind and what I'm thinking. And it's so noisy and such urgency, right? Like there's so much urgency there that it looks like I need to attend to it and take care of it and fix it. And that's what it says. Something's wrong. I need to fix it. I need to fix it now. And so I leave, or I bring my attention there to try to do that, to try to solve it. It looks like it makes sense. But the more I see that actually being here, that this returning and being in this place of stillness has what I'm looking for and helps me with the external concerns that my mind is trying to drive me to solve immediately. There's a different quality of ideas and creativity that comes from slowing down and being present. It just doesn't make as much sense to leave as often, and it makes more sense to come back as soon as I realize I'm caught up. So there's a natural catching on to this that happens as we start to see what we're doing all day long, right? Really seeing it. And practices are supportive. And, I've had many that I've turned to at different points in my life. And now I engage with them very lightly. It feels like a beautiful expression of what I'm choosing to do, which is come back here. So I'm wondering what, if anything, that sparks in you.
I think that I'm in a different place right now. For me, I'm returning to certain practices. And I think that that's like normal too, is to have things that for some time supported and then became for instance, like the last 2 years, I didn't meditate. And now I'm like meditating every morning. And I think that everything feels very seasonal to
Mm,
me, and like sometimes I'm like in the winter of my life and I need certain things that you need in the winter. And sometimes I'm in the spring of my life and I need certain things. Sometimes I'm in the spring of Monday and Tuesday of my week. And then like Thursday, Friday is the winter. Nothing feels very linear. I teach a lot about how to be in relationship with change in my work. My last book is really about that. And because my trainings are really one of the core understandings of them is like, how can we be in relationship with impermanence and change? I think for me in my life and with my business, what gives it resilience is not being so attached to things being a certain way,
Mm.
and simultaneously being attached to certain things being a certain way. And so I'm a big fan of paradox, and I hold things very lightly and very strongly at the same time. And I feel that way about my practices, which is like, depending on the season, I'll pull it really close or I'll let it go. And so I'm as a mindset, I'm much more of an animist, which means like I see everything as alive. And so could be that like practices are too. And or another way of talking about it like metaphorically is like practices are like friends. And there are certain friends that I sometimes I like we're in touch all the time and then suddenly we're not, and other friends we're not in touch all the time and suddenly we are. And so I think when it comes to those things, um, I'm very I have like a like kind of a both and relationship with them. And then there's certain things, for instance, like we were talking about sabbaticals, where this is like the friend I really want and really don't want. And like, and so, yeah, it's just for me, really, it's really about listening and trusting in my capacity and worrying less. Yeah,
Mm.
because I have a strong worrier in me. Not warrior, worrier.
With an O, not an A.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have maybe a strong warrior too, but
Yeah, I
my
was gonna say that. You have that too. You have that too. Let's call that maybe another beautiful paradox or not.
warrior.
Yeah. I love that day. I really do. I think that we really do have a sense when we listen of what we need right now. What's for us, what friends we need to hang out with, metaphoric or otherwise. And it sounds like you have that and you have that sense of, yeah, now is the time, the season for this, and there's a season for letting it go, which is true of everything.
Which doesn't make it easier.
Hmm.
I really want whoever's listening to this to really come away, at least from my perspective, with it ain't easy. Like none of this is easy. And I have such an aversion to kind of the performative qualities in social media of how people make things look so easy.
Hmm.
It's all to me, it's such a untrustworthy like marketing of ourselves.
Hmm.
And so none of this has been easy. And at the same time, it's been easy. Like it's like things have just, when I let them happen, they just happen. And if I get out of the way, like I'm usually led in the right direction. So the paradox is there too. It's like, my having a business has been incredibly difficult and incredibly not difficult at the same time. And that's to me like representing the full spectrum is where you can find things that are trustworthy. If we're only talking about what works or what feels good, it's not trustworthy to
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to ever represent myself like that or my work like that. Like it's a both and.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's kind of a reminder. What I'm hearing is a reminder of the humanness, the ups and downs, the highs and lows that we will have on this human journey, the failures and successes, and including them all, and letting people see them, that it's okay and that there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
It's seasons. Don't make me sing, but that is, to everything turn. Like it is sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down.
Yeah.
And the question is like, can all of that be allowed? Can you be hospitable to, I'm assuming we're talking to folks here where we're talking about their business, when their business is working, when it's not working, when You're getting clients when you're not getting clients. Like there's so much volatility in it. And there's really like the muscle is a tolerance for change, which is just true for life
Mm.
in general. But I think if you're owning a business, it's like really cultivating a relationship and a tolerance for change and really contending with your own preferences of how you want things to be.
Mm. Yeah. Day, I want to ask you about the ritual, the practices that you're now sharing with people that they can use to contend with change and grief and loss and create inside of it. What do you think about it is so healing or transformational for
About
people?
ritual.
Yeah, tell me about like or about about ritual in general and specifically what you're doing in nature with these things.
Oh, with morning altars.
With both, like however you want to take that question. Sure.
Well, what the crossover point is that rituals and specifically morning altars, which is my business, what they do and what makes them valuable is they are demarcators. Simply, they demarcate. Another way of saying it is they mark. So, what is marking? Why do we need it? These are like questions that often come from that, which is, and it makes sense because we live in a culture that's like really ritual illiterate, and we even confuse rituals with routines most of the time. But marking is what rituals do. What that another way of describing that is they create boundaries. They create limits. And so a very easy example is to give you something from my culture, which is I was born into a Jewish culture. We do have many, many, many rituals. One of them is around our Sabbath, otherwise known as our Shabbat. And it starts on Friday night, it ends on Saturday night. And so for 24 hours, we are and have been for thousands of years told to rest in that time. Look at the theme. It's continuing. And so but if you don't mark the beginning of that thing and the end of that thing, then you don't know if you're in that thing. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Right. So you have to somehow mark the end of the work week and you have to somehow mark the end of the rest period and you create demarcations and limits. So you're basically saying like, when you come up against the end of the work week, there are certain things you cannot do that you do during the work week. And so, for instance, for like 12 years of my childhood, from like 11 to whatever 11 plus 12 is, um, I'm an artist. I'm not a mathematician. Okay. Um, I was observant of our Sabbath. And we would mark the beginning with many different rituals, but one of them which is really easy, is we light candles. And so every Friday at sundown, I would light candles. And then from Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown, I would basically, as a teenager, nap, eat, walk my dog, read a book. That's all I did. And then Saturday night, go out with my friends. But I needed candle lighting is the marking of the end of the work week. Now, nowadays, I need that more than ever. But for some reason, I'm not doing it. But I need markers to limit my work. Otherwise, I'm bringing the work into the weekend,
Mm.
into the evening, and worst case scenario, into bed in the middle of the night. Right. And so we have to create limits for things so that we can create space for other things. And so ritual creates limits on certain things. It helps to mark time so that we can live in the other thing. And I'm giving you a very easy example, but I can talk about grief and loss, right? But specifically like rest. We're
Mhm.
creating limits on work so that we can be in the non-work and replenish ourselves and then mark the end of that so we can go back to work. And by doing that, we have a more of a clear understanding of where we are in time, in the timeline of the week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But what is can you translate that for me into morning altars? Like what's happening there, the marking that's happening and the
So that's another way of marking. So for instance, like lighting candles is a way of marking, breaking something, twisting something, burying something, submerging something. These are just ways of marking. So making something beautiful, which is what I did after my dad died and my relationship ended, making something beautiful that came to call morning altars, felt like I was making an altar, is another way of marking. And the reason I call them morning altars is I was marking the start of the day. I was making them in the morning, and they were ways for me to both center gratitude and like really a deep appreciation for being alive, and also center my grief, right? Because grief, most of the time in a workday, there's no place for it, right? It's like, how do you work with clients or do emails or whatever when you're grieving? And so it gave me a place every morning to like have my grief live somewhere so
Mm,
that I could do my work.
that's beautiful. I remember years ago, it was early in when I was in my coaching journey and I was just kind of moving from more consulting into coaching work. And one of my clients was in the process of breaking up with her husband, and it was very, very, very painful. And she said, "I feel like I just wanna shatter in a million pieces." And as we were talking, it came to her to do a kind of like almost like a funeral ritual for the dreams that she had of this marriage, to let it go. And so what I'm hearing in that is to, like, allow yourself a place to express it and see that there's a safe space to be with it. There's a beginning and there's an end to it. It's like there's a container within which you can have this in a world that maybe says that's not allowed, or in a life that doesn't allow for time and space. That's really cool.
Yeah. Container is a good word to use with it because a container has an entrance and an exit, right? Like it has structure, it has scaffolding. And in today's world, it's so all over the place. You know, things are just a fucking mess. And we don't know how to create good containers, right? We know how to create kind of structures in space a lot of the time, but we don't really know how to do that in time, creating
Mm,
containers in time. And so, that's where you have, people just attention out the window, distracted. Like there's not a lot of there's not a lot of container education out there. And so for me, the thing that cultures all over the world, minus this modern culture, have been really good at for thousands and thousands of years is making ritualized containers, making spaces where people know where they are, right? Because sometimes we forget where
mm,
we are or what's happening. And so, and most of the time, those cultures were doing rituals collectively so that the people knew where they were. Another example, for instance, is like when the season changes, right? We move from like spring into summer. That's a total different thing when we were less of a technological culture. Like the people needed to do different things at the shift of the seasons. And so the ritual helped to mark the change so that the people knew, oh, I have different responsibilities now. But you can pull that thread into modern culture and say, like, okay, so like maybe I'm not outside tending my farm, but I'm doing work. And so the example I gave earlier today is like, but when does the work end? Does it end in the evening? Like as an entrepreneur, the last night I got a Voxer at 11 p.m. and I woke up to a Voxer at 5 a.m. from one of my employees who lives in the East Coast. Where are my boundaries with that? Am I checking it? Am I worrying about it? Am I doing it? Like, where are the boundaries so I know where I am in my day? And I have learned this the hard way because I have had poor boundaries around this, but to sustain a healthy relationship with my business, it's really about creating healthy boundaries and rituals and are ways to make meaning with boundaries.
I like that. There's something kind of magical about rituals and doing them in this way. It feels like more than it reminds me that it's more than a simple act. I am imbuing it with meaning. And so it becomes whatever significance it is that I'm creating in it. It's, oh, I see. It feels like it's a way to magnify or amplify with my creativity and attention the effect that I'd wish for it to have. So that it's more than just doing a thing if we bring ourselves to it. Like it actually facilitates whatever creative process we're in, whether that's transitioning from rest to work or from, being in my everyday to grieving to gratitude to whatever these things are to creation. That's really cool. Thank you.
On board with it.
Yeah. So you've made it a focus to really help people to find this sense of meaning, to reconnect with it, to return to these things. If there was a message that you could give to people that would make the biggest difference for them, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be connected to what we talked about. It might be. What message would you love for people to know?
That's a big question. A message that
It is, and it also could be very simple. You could take a moment to sit with that, of course.
no, I don't necessarily need a moment. I mean, right now, if it's not entirely tethered to what we're talking about, to me, the message that and I think this is how I carry myself, which you've seen this entire hour that we've been talking, is not getting stuck in things being a certain way. And that is true, by the way, for seriousness and humor, right? Like, because there's a lot, one of the things I see, especially amongst, I work with a lot of helpers and healers and therapists and social workers and coaches and doulas and people that have really beautiful hearts and strong intentions about helping the world. But sometimes they're like, without realizing it, they get stuck in the earnestness and the seriousness of it. And so then how do we build in play and humor and irreverence and whimsy, which is the name of my dog? And then same thing, like if we're playing and joking and irreverent, and that's too scattered and shallow, how do we also not get so attached to things being in that way and find our way back into depth and meaning and earnestness and intention? And for me, it's really always, I try to be at the edge of those things because getting stuck is a real serious, especially as you age, it's really a serious pitfall, getting stuck in things being a certain way. And so I guess going back to your question of like the thing that I don't know how you phrased it, but like what's my advice to folks is like live more at the edge. Live more at the edge of your work, live more at the edge of your creativity, live more at the edge of your relationships. It is more uncomfortable, right? But it's more creative and it's more life-giving and there's more learning that happens at the edge. And so just be mindful of concretizing and getting stuck in things being a certain way and keep letting change and impermanence swirl you a bit so that you can come back to the things you love in a new way.
Mhm. Will you tell me just a little bit more, Day, about what living at the edge means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been describing it as like not getting so lost in the familiar and in the comfort and in the, and in the things that, like, for instance, like not safely just giving your opinion, but being willing to approach uncertainty, right? Interfacing with uncertainty,
Mm,
letting things carry more mystery, not being so sure, letting yourself wander in a conversation, right? Like, like the edge is the edge of what you know. It's the edge of what you're familiar with. It's the edge of who you think you are. And everyone, no one is free of getting stuck there because safety is seductive. But so letting yourself live at the edge of possibility, what might be, is what I'm saying.
thank you. That clarifies it for me. That's what I was hearing. Was in the uncertainty of not knowing. It's a very beautiful space to be in. Awesome. Well, thank you. And if people are listening or watching and they would like to follow you and learn more about what you're doing, where can they go?
You can walk into the forest and you can speak to the old tree and a little rainbow fairy will come out and then I'll be there.
If I say your name 3 times, will you appear and
I'm
call
not
me?
Rumpelstiltskin. In all seriousness, my website is morningaltars.com. Morning as in this morning, altars with an ALTARS.com. It's the same name for all of the social media. And I should say that if my style of teaching is resonating with you, we open our teacher training cohorts 3 times a year. And it is a 7-month certification. And it's part training, part Earth Church, like deeply it's spiritual and inspiring and just a new way of seeing the world and a new way of seeing your life. And yes, and books and stuff and art and all the things.
Gorgeous. I will post the relevant links
I found that.
below this blog, podcast,
And a
and
map of
video
the
description,
forest.
and a map of the forest so that you can find the fairies and call upon Day when you most would like to.
Probably the
Thank-
first time someone said this on your podcast.
I think it's fair to say that's true. I'm delighted that you were the first and the only. So thank you so much, Day, for joining me. This has been a great pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wildspire email from me filled with inspiring stories, unmarketing experiments, tips for playing your way to impact and income without the hustle and hype, insights from my spiritual business journey, and more, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/wildspire. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.